Hey, in this video I'm going to be discussing honor, and I'm just going to be relating it to its counterpart, pragmatism, and I'm going to be trying to come to some conclusions about what that means for us today and how we should be living our lives. So, just to start with, what is honor? Honor is the idea, in older English, it's the idea of a bond between a person and their society, which manifests itself as a code of ethics and a code of conduct, so to speak, right? So this concept can be seen in samurai and medieval knights, where the idea is that you have between you and your society sets out certain guidelines for how you should act, and you act strictly in accordance with those, and you don't compromise that. So that could be things like chivalry, and battlefield acts and honor on the battlefield, right? So how you treat enemy combatants and a code of conduct that manifests like that. And in a more modern sense, we often think of honor as a personal code of conduct, and that you don't violate that personal code. But it's interesting as well because honor also has concepts that apply to other people, because if your personal code of honor contradicts someone else's, then your honor might lead you to seeking to challenge them in some way, and this could be seen with duels throughout the 17th and 18th century, where somebody might insult your honor. That is to say that they imply that you would do something outside of your code of conduct, or you have done something outside of your code of conduct, and you need to defend yourself, often through violence. So, now this might seem like a relatively antiquated idea, and to some people it is. Some people, a lot of people have left behind the concept of honor ethics, and most people don't base their ethics off that anymore. However, I think that this is not totally a good thing, and I think there are some arguments for honor, and then there are some arguments for its opposite, pragmatism, and then perhaps there's a third dark horse candidate, which some people would call an objective morality, or a morality set down by an objective figure. Now, so let's just discuss that to begin with. So first of all, what do we think about pragmatism? So pragmatism is the idea that you be pragmatic in your actions. So every action is to benefit you in a pragmatic sense. So every action is to benefit you in the maximum sense. So if you were fully pragmatic, you would, as an example, if you were totally pragmatic and you had no morals at all, then you wouldn't mind stealing or anything if you think that it would get you ahead. And so obviously this is what most people would consider quite an immoral way to live, right? But we also have to acknowledge that we bring pragmatism into our lives all the time. So say you have a honor code, right? Or not even an honor code, say you have your own ethical code. And perhaps you think to yourself, I don't like to lie, okay? But think about the last time you lied, right? It was probably for a reason that helped you or someone else, right? Or at least you think so, right? So maybe you told a lie, oh, honest boss, I was sick for work, right? Now, that perhaps goes against your ethical code and maybe your honor code, depending on which way you think about these things. But you brought some pragmatism in and you said, okay, I need to benefit myself here. And so I'm happy to go against my code for pragmatic material benefit, right? And this is not necessarily always so cut and dry as a bad thing. Perhaps, for example, you are against violence, but someone was trying to hurt your girlfriend or something, and you punched them, right? And now you've brought a bit of pragmatism once again into your ethics or your honor code, because you went against your code, but it was to benefit someone you loved and to benefit yourself, to prevent them from being harmed. So we can see that pragmatism in the extreme might not be great, because it means that you're always doing this and you're totally against you don't even have an ethical or moral code at all, or an honor code, right? So we obviously are against a full, or at least in my personal perspective, full pragmatism is not the way to go, right? But we can see that in some cases, bringing some pragmatism in to some other ideologies, other moral frameworks, is a good idea. So now let's take a look at where honor might have a place in today's society, and specifically, and I'm not trying to make big societal judgments here. I'm specifically mean for you, okay, as the viewer, where honor might have a role in your life and whether you might want to include it, so to speak. So we all try. Or in general, we all try to live up to the way we want to live. That is to say, we have somewhere, even if we haven't thought about it consciously, we have a set of values that we generally want to live up to, right? And often we don't, right? And that's where you get this, cognitive dissonance sort of thing going on, where you have something that you want to do, and you don't live up to it, and that doesn't make you feel good. So, like I said, say you are against against a certain act, but you do it anyway, right? So that doesn't make you feel great. So some people would argue that the solution to this is a rigid honor code. So you're very specific about it. So it's not just sort of in the back of your mind, oh, do I believe this or not? You're very specific and you have a very specific code that you always adhere to, and you never deviate from this code, right? So say this could be, say it's just 5 things, just as an example. Your honor code says you don't lie, you don't cheat, you value your friends over anything, you value your family over anything, and you value your state over anything, right? So say those are your five tenets of your honor code, right? Now you can live to that code, and you could adhere to that very, very strictly, and you would not super often come into conflict with those things, although maybe the lying thing on the friends thing would come in every now and again. But the point is that you could live to that honor code, right? And if you did that, right, you would be living to a rigid honor code, and you'd be living up to the ideas of honor, and you would be, in your own mind, an honorable person, okay? However, like I said, you might run into some concerns where pragmatism and your honor start to be at odds. So say, for example, your girlfriend walks up to you and says, do I look fat in this, right? And you say, I can't lie, and yep, that dress makes you look a bit fat. Now, that, you adhered to your honor code, okay? However, pragmatically, what you did didn't make much sense, because now not only have you hurt your girlfriend, but you've also hurt yourself and your relationship with her. So what we can see, and this same sort of thing could happen, say, for example, you're loyal to your state, right? Now, your state says, okay, let's go fight a war. Now, that's the honorable thing to do, but it's not the pragmatic thing to do, because you might die, and once again, you've hurt yourself and the people you love. And now we can start to see as well with this honor that we can start to get some contradictions, right? Because say you're loyal to your state, but you're also loyal to your family, right? So to be loyal to your state, you're going to go fight the war and fight for your state, right? However, to be loyal to your family, this doesn't make a lot of sense at all, because your family now has to live without you, and assuming you were a positive force in your family, that's not very loyal to your family, right? So we can start to see how sometimes our honor can sort of contradict itself, and it can be very hard to make judgments on what the best, most honorable thing is to do. And we also ran into another conflict here, which is, and this isn't so relevant for modern definitions of honor or modern applications of honor, but if we go back a little bit, it's because this problem I'm about to bring up becomes much more of a problem, which is to say that, so back in the day, honor was often very much tied to one's state, one's identity, that is to say, one's place in society, so one's class. So, And what the problem we have here is that we are binding our morals to things outside of our control, right? So say I'm always loyal to my state, but what if my state starts doing things that I disagree with, or that I don't like, or starts requiring things of me that are, in my opinion, wrong or bad for me, or bad for my other parts of my honor, right? So, and this starts to be a problem, because what you're doing here is you're basing your morals on things outside of your control, but you're forcing yourself to live by them. And this could be with anything, because what one must remember is when adhering to a rigid code, if you set yourself a rigid code, you have to be very, very sure that the stuff in your code is right, okay? And the problem with this is that you are a product of your society, and what you think is right might actually not be right, and it may be that later in life you want to change that, right? So, for example, perhaps you were born in 1970, 1960, and you were brought up to believe that certain other races or genders or sexual orientations were wrong, and it was part of your honor code to be against that, right? It could be a religious thing, right? Now, here comes the year 2020, and you're like, oh God, that was wrong. That shouldn't be part of my code anymore. But if that's so entrenched deep in your honor code, right, and you would feel like it would be the not honorable thing to do to give up that belief, then suddenly your moral intuition is at odds with the code of how you're living your life. And that's just an example. But the point I'm giving here is that the one problem with an honor code is that if you are making it extremely rigid, you can be binding it to things outside. And if you are binding it to things that are brought to you by society, such as your state or your perspectives on certain people, right? Now, if you're binding your honor code to that and then you want to change your perspectives on that, it could be quite difficult, right? And it could make you seem dishonorable to yourself, right? So, but this problem can be quite easily circumvented, in my opinion, by not buying. So if you wish to have an honor code, don't bind it to some stuff outside of your control. So that could be, so don't bind it to your state. Don't say I will be loyal to your state. Rather say something like, or have a perspective, a part of your code, something like, I'm loyal to my code, and if my code says that what my state is doing is right, then I'll be loyal to that, right? So that, you could argue, it's bringing a little bit of pragmatism in to your honor code. And this is an interesting idea, an idea that I've been thinking about recently, which is that we can have honor, but we can use pragmatism to make our conceptions of how honor works more relevant, right? So we can bring in some pragmatism to our honor code. So, for example, instead of saying, I will not lie, say, I will not lie unless it is to benefit some other part of my honor code. That is to say, I will not lie unless it benefits my family, as an example. Or, I will not be violent unless, and to bring some pragmatism here, I need to be to benefit my family or to benefit myself in a moral way, right? So, I guess my perspective here, and with this video, is that what we can do is we can bring these two concepts together and have form a bit of a nexus of a much more useful honor system. So my advice to you, and something I've been thinking about myself, is that if you're looking for a moral framework and a framework to live your life by, and you want to be an honorable person, right? It might be useful to take some of these concepts of honor from from history, and from some people who are big into this sort of thing. So take some of that, but then mix it with some pragmatism and bring them together to form a moral compass, an honor code that works for you. Okay, so like I said, some examples of this could be, I will do X or I will not do X unless Y. Okay, and some might say that this unless Y sort of idea is a sort of a contradiction, because honor is supposed to be rigid and it's supposed to be it's supposed to define how you live. And I won't disagree with that. And you can still be rigid, but with the unless Y itself, you could still be rigid to that, right? So say your honor concept is, I will not lie unless it benefits my family or people I care about, right? Now, that is no less rigid than I will not lie. They're both rigid statements, right? However, one of them allows you to incorporate more of a practical way of living into your life while still maintaining a strong honor code. But you might ask, Michael, well, why should I bother having this honor code? I mean, I know what's right, I know what's wrong, don't kill people, blah, 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 blah. So why should I bother having honor code? It sounds like a lot of, thinking, bringing pragmatism in and blah, 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 blah. Why should I do this, right? And I would say that the answer to that is that an honor code allows you to have a very specific way of living your life, that allows you to avoid that cognitive dissonance thing. Because if you come up with some rigid concepts, with some pragmatism included, so you feel like you're able to live up to them, right? Then you won't experience the dissonance between what you want to do and what you are doing, because you'll have this rigid code and you'll know how you want to live. And even if you don't live up to it, you will know what you did wrong specifically. So you won't be thinking, oh, I feel like what I did there was against my code, but I don't know why, it just felt wrong, right? You will know what you did was wrong, or you know what you did was right, and you'll know why. So my advice to you after watching this video is go have a think about how you live, about how you want to live, right? And what tenets you want to live through, right? And think about how that could be, and this is not a prescriptive video, you don't have to do this, but it's an idea. You could think about how you could form that into a code and bring these two concepts together, because you want to be honorable, or maybe you want to be honorable, okay? And you want to live your life in a way that you believe is moral and rigid and strict. And maybe this limits you in some ways. Maybe this could even be bad for you in some ways, but it's overall you believe it's the right thing. So take that honor side of things, that core benefit of the honor system, right? Then bring in a little bit of pragmatism and a little bit of practicality, and mix that with your honor code, and maybe try and come out of it with a set of principles for how you want to live your life in a practical, useful, but also moral and honorable way. So yeah, thanks very much for listening to this video. This has been a little bit of a ramble about the concept of honor, and so you can click off the video now if you're just here for sort of the philosophy, if you will. And I just want to quickly chat about how I sort of came across this, or why I was thinking about this idea. Because I've just found the idea of honor really interesting, and I feel like honor is, as a rigid way of living your life, it's a really good way of sort of putting the way you live in a rigid system that allows you to sort of structure your moral system, right? But I've always thought that honor has this sort of, the rigidity is also its biggest weakness, because it's not pragmatic. I mean, honestly, if you're going to say, oh, I'm never going to lie, right? Then you're not really going to be benefiting yourself or even the people around you a lot of the time. Although you will some of the time, right? And so that's why I thought that maybe just this idea of bringing this pragmatism into your honor would be an interesting idea to put out there. So yeah, thanks very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this more rambly philosophy style video. So yeah, thanks for watching, and have a great day.